Some biblical examples of men of faith. Abraham. God made a covenant with Abraham that was to be established through his son Isaac. Genesis chapter 17, verse 21. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this set time next year. When God told Abraham to go sacrifice his son Isaac, Abraham was able to make the appropriate faith confession that released his faith. Because of his confidence and assurance in the covenant that God had previously established with him. Genesis chapter 22, verse 5. And Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship, and we will come back to you." Genesis chapter 22, verse 8. And Abraham said, "My son, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering." So the two of them went together. Abraham believed, and therefore he spoke. Abraham was fully convinced in what God said. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac. Abraham believed God's word and was fully convinced in what God said. The example of David. David was able to make a strong confession of faith regarding the defeat of Goliath because he too knew what God was able to do. He had already experienced victory by the hand of God working on his behalf. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 26. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done for the man who killeth this Philistine, and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David said in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 37, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." An important thing to keep in mind in David's situation is David did not step out in presumption against Goliath. David had God's word in the situation, seeing it from God's perspective. David was going from faith to faith. Romans chapter 1, verse 17. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. David believed, and therefore he spoke. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 37, "The Lord who delivered me, he will deliver me." And in Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 4, "For the Lord your God is he that goeth with you, to fight for you against your enemies, to save you." David believed God's word, and he was fully convinced in what God said.